Ants. Ants are a reality in most gardens, especially if you live in the South like me. I mean, if you know, you know. But, in general, I try to coexist with the wildlife that's in my garden, but sometimes you just have to intervene. Like when an ant colony decides to set up a permanent housing complex in one of my raised beds. Now, I've tried so many different things to deal with the ants in my garden, but I wanted to discover once and for all which ways work the best, which ones are going to take the least amount of effort and expense for the best benefit. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. Keep watching and I'll show you what I did, and at the end of the video you'll find out which methods worked the best to just kind of get a handle on the ant takeover in my garden. Now, I want to make it very clear, ants are not all bad, and it really depends on what kind of ants you had. So some ants can do really good things for the garden. They aerate the soil because they tunnel underground and build their colonies. They're giving space in the soil to move air and water and nutrients through. They also help decompose organic matter. When they bring in things to eat, that matter is decomposing and helping the soil. They often are predators for even worse insects. Certain ants will actually feed off of bad bugs. And then also, they are a food source themselves for other wildlife that are an important part of the ecosystem. So ants aren't all bad, but sometimes they are. When ants are bad, they're really bad. Certain kinds of ants can defoliate a whole garden really quickly. They'll remove the leaves and they'll go off at home and feed on them, and you're left with nothing but bare stems. The ants that I'm dealing with are the dreaded fire ants, or sometimes you'll hear them called red ants. And these are the worst. They do so many bad things. For one thing, they have a really painful sting. They also spread very quickly and build these huge mounds that can have up to like 1 million ants in a single colony, which is just insane to me. They're aggressive if you disturb them. And speaking of disturbing, they will disturb the root system of whatever they're around. They also feed on seedlings. So you can imagine how hard it is in a raised bed to start seeds or to plant baby seedlings and just see most of them disappear. That's the fire ants. And to top it all off, they also will help out the aphids. So they'll actually move aphids around plants, carry them where they want to go, kind of protect them, because aphids will make that sweet, sticky honeydew residue that ants love to feed on. So if aphids are becoming a problem, it might actually be the ants that are your problem. So the goal here is relocation, not eradication. I can't really get rid of all the ants. I don't necessarily want to get rid of all the ants. I just want them out of my garden, specifically out of my raised beds and out of my pots. So I tried a lot of different methods and products in various ways, and some of them have given me some success, and I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video, but first let me show you what I did. The first problem area I have to deal with is this big ant bed right outside of one of my raised beds in the walkway in between the beds. And obviously this is a problem because I don't want to be walking on ants if I can avoid it, but also because I know they're probably also established a colony inside of the bed itself. And in fact, I can see one place for sure where that has happened. So I want to try to take care of this and relocate them. And the best way that I know to do that is to just flood it with water, and that's going to force them to find a new place to live. The next thing I have to take care of is the ants that are always infesting my potted fruit trees. So I've got these few potted citrus trees around my garden, and some figs and some other potted trees. And what I find is I may not get like a full ant colony established in there, but the soil will just be completely infested with ants, particularly fire ants. Not the worst in that they're not setting up home there, but the problem is that what they do is they kind of get comfortable and they decide they need some pets, so they start farming aphids. So these ants will take aphids and literally carry them up the tree, help them settle in, give them a place to procreate and multiply, and before you know it, your tree is covered in aphids. Not good. And then to top it all off, if you're like me and you're growing potted fruit trees, because they may not be able to survive the winter in the ground, well, come winter, I need to be able to bring them into my garage or maybe even into the house. And I really don't want to bring in fire ant infested pots into my house. So I've got to be able to get rid of the ants in these pots and then hopefully prevent them from taking a hold again. Okay, so the first step, we're going to try to get rid of the ants that are in the pots. And I don't know if this will kill them or hopefully simply just drive them away to go somewhere else. But we're going to use an orange oil, and we're going to mix 2 ounces of this with about a gallon of water to drench the soil and drive the ants out. I've seen mixed things as to whether it will kill the ants at that concentration or whether the ants don't like it and so they just leave. So we're gonna see what happens. But this is not simply orange oil. It's this ingredient that occurs naturally in oranges and citrus called D-limonene. And that is the sort of insecticidal part that the bugs don't like. And I've seen it used for a lot of different uses. I've seen it used as a soil drench for mounds like out in the yard. Since I'm using it in a pot, I want to do it at a little bit lower concentration. I don't want to run any risk of burning the roots or anything like that, because at higher concentrations, this same ingredient can be used as an herbicide. So you definitely want to be careful and follow the instructions. I decided to test out the orange oil first on this super fun ant colony that's taken root in this little container that used to have mint in it. Now it's just covered in weeds. And I just poured a little bit in, and they are really not happy. So I'm gonna go a little further with it and see what happens. The next thing I'm gonna try is a classic borax and sugar ant bait. And what I love about this method is it's cheap, it's really, really easy. And for a long time, I didn't even know I was already using this. My favorite ant bait for in the house is taro. And that's exactly what taro is. It's a little syrup made from borax and sugar. And the ants come and they take this sweet syrup away, and then they take it back to their nest, and it kills them slowly over the next couple of days. And that has always worked super well whenever I've found ants in the house. And come to find out, that's exactly what borax and sugar does. And so I'm going to use it on this bed that I've got in my raised garden bed. And this is going to work really well if you can locate it either on the trail of the ants headed back to their nest or near the entrance of a nest. And I have definitely found where the entrance is to this ant nest. Let me show you what I mean. So here you can see this kind of hole area near this ant nest buildup. And I know if I poke into this, you can see the ants get really angry and just start pouring out. So I know this is their home. This is where they're going to be. So I'm going to make myself a borax and sugar and water paste. You don't want anything too runny because then it's too diluted and the ants won't be able to pick it up and bring it back. But you also don't want just the granules because then they're going to just pick out the sugar granules and ignore the borax. So you want it to be a paste so that they're forced to kind of pick it up in chunks and take it back to their home. Check it out. You can see their little trail. Ooh, I see another entrance point right here. See the trail of ants leads that way and they're entering right here. So I think I need to do something there. Another thing I want to try is using cinnamon and putting it right around the entrance to the big ant hill. And that's supposed to help repel ants. And cinnamon isn't going to hurt the plants at all, but they really don't like it. So let's see if this works. It's a few days after I applied the orange oil solution to my key lime tree pot, and I think it's worked really well. I haven't seen any ants as I've poked around in the soil. So now I'm going to concentrate on preventing more ants from wanting to come back in there. So I'm going to do that two ways. First, I'm going to use diatomaceous earth, which is a natural product. It's made of silica, which actually it's interesting because it's harvested from like fossilized aquatic organisms. Anyways, that's maybe another topic for another day, but it's just a simple product. It's sort of a white powder, you'll see in just a second, and I'm gonna sprinkle that all over the top of the pot. It's gonna, when certain bugs, including ants, encounter it, it kind of wiggles its way underneath the exoskeleton and kills the ants as it kind of rubs and is abrasive to them. It doesn't work on every insect or every pest in the garden, but it should work on ants, but only if it comes to contact with them. So I'm going to sprinkle it as a bit of a barrier around the tree. Downside to DE is that you do need to reapply after you water or after a rain because it loses its effectiveness if it gets wet. But I'm going to pair that actually with coffee grounds because coffee grounds are repellent to ants, apparently. I actually haven't tried this before. And these are spent coffee grounds that I've already used. So I've already brewed coffee, and this is what's left over. And I don't know if it's just their aroma or what, but again, we're trying to keep the ants away. So let's see if this works. It's been 3 or 4 days, and this anthill in my raised bed is still an anthill, unfortunately. I'm hoping it's working a little bit, but I think I made the mistake of making the borax mixture too runny. So I'm trying it again. I'm gonna try a little bit higher concentration. So I'm gonna do 1 part borax, 1 part sugar, and then just the tiniest bit of water, just enough so that it clumps together. I'm not even gonna call it a paste. You'll see in just a second. So it ended up being a 1/2 cup of borax, a 1/2 cup of sugar, and only 2 tablespoons of water, and just to make it clump. And I'm gonna try to locate that as best I can on the trail to the anthill as well as around the entrance and see if that makes a difference. It's now several days later, and so I want to give you sort of my report on all of the different methods I used and what worked and what didn't. So for me, the orange oil was the hero of the week. I haven't seen an ant in this key lime tree pot since I did it, and the really great thing for me was seeing how well it worked on the mound that I drenched elsewhere, and I haven't seen any ants come back there. And if you know how hard fire ants are to get rid of. So drenching the pot with the 2 ounce to a gallon and a half of water concentration of that orange oil, that D-limonene, worked wonderfully. And as you can see behind me, there is absolutely 0 negative effect on the key lime tree. As far as the other things I did in the pot, the diatomaceous earth and the coffee grounds, just gonna have to see over time how well that works to keep the ants from coming back. The thing to remember about the diatomaceous earth, just to reiterate, is that it's only gonna work if it's dry, and it's only gonna work on contact with the ants. And so at best, I think it works as a barrier, which is why I'm hopeful that it can help keep the ants out of the pot. Same kind of deal with the coffee grounds. I don't know if it's just the scent or if there's something about it that they don't like. But I'm planning to keep using those and just see how that does to maintain the pot and keep ants away from it. But I can always do another orange oil drench if I need to. As far as the ants in the raised bed, so once I did a second round of the borax sugar solution and made sure it wasn't too wet, it worked really, really well. And within a day, that mound was completely empty and I was able to just flatten it. It was gone. So that was awesome. I'm gonna definitely do that again and keep it in mind. And then, just kind of drenching the bed and the walkway with the hose worked well. That was super easy. I'm often walking around my garden with a hose, so it was really simple to do. And all I wanted to do was move the ants. I didn't need to kill them all. I just want them to relocate. Jury's still out on the cinnamon. I know a lot of people have had success with that. It wasn't enough on its own to really make any impact. So I'm gonna keep playing with it because there may be better ways to use it in other situations. But let me know in the comments, what are your favorite ways to handle ants in your garden? What are some of the things that that you've found that work really well. I think the biggest thing is to just try several things and see what works for you. But I know now I'm gonna keep orange oil, diatomaceous earth, and borax on hand because I love that I was able to make such a difference in a week with really simple DIY solutions. So I hope this video is helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.